Today we're going to talk about piecewise functions. And piecewise functions are really similar to what we did yesterday with functions. Again, a function takes inputs to outputs. And generally we had one rule, like let f of x be x plus 3. So any time that you took a number, you'd add 3 to it. Well, what a piecewise function does is it says, I don't only want to have one rule. Sometimes I want to have two rules that take my inputs at different times. So this is kind of how we read this. This whole thing would be my function, and it's a piecewise function. And it says if your input is bigger than 3, so if your input is greater than 3, you're going to use this rule right here. You add 3. So any times x is bigger than 3, I'm going to add 3 to it to figure out the output. And then they have this down here. They say, okay, but when it's not greater than 3, because there's numbers that are less than 3, if my input is less than 3, which that's what this is telling me right here, I'm going to use this function right here. Okay? Let's try a couple of these. So they might say, okay, we got f of 2. Now I just kind of look through what rule I'm supposed to use. It's telling me that my input is 2. If my input is 2, the rule I should be using is the less than 3 rule. So I'm going to use that rule that we have underlined in blue because 2 is less than 3. So now all I do is I just plug it in. So the rule says take the input, times it by 2, and minus 1. Well, if I do that, I'll get 4 minus 1, which is 3. And that would be my answer if my input is 2. Let's say now that my input is 5. If my input is 5, what I want to do is I want to use this rule because 5 is bigger than 3, so I want to use the rule in yellow. So that means that 5 plus 3, because the rule says take your input, add 3 to it, and 5 plus 3 would be 8. Okay. Now you might be asking yourself, what if they chose 3? So what if we want the function at 3? Well, again, I just read my rules. This one is strictly less than 3. So this one is strictly less than 3. So I don't want to use this one because it's strictly less than 3. But this one is 3 or is greater than 3 or equal. So 3 would fall into this as an input. So we would have 3 plus 3, which would give us 6. Okay? That's kind of how we use a piecewise function. I'm going to do one or two more examples, but this is essentially the same thing over and over again, what you're going to try to do today. Okay, so this piecewise function looks a little bit different because instead of having 2, they have 3 now. We can keep moving this up, so piecewise functions can break up as much as we need. Generally, though, we don't have more than 3 rules. So if we kind of look, here's the rules. We're going to use this when x is less than -1. We're going to use this rule when x is between -1 and 2. And we're going to use this rule right here, or this function right here, when x is greater than 2. So let's just see a couple of the things we could get. We could get f is -3. Well, let's think for a second. If it's -3, my input is less than -1. So I'm going to use the rule that's in green. That would give me 3 times -3 minus 1. And that is equal to -10. Let's take another one. Let's say f is 10. If f is 10, then I'm going to use this rule that's purple because my input is greater than 2. So I'm going to write 2 times 10 plus 1, which is equal to 21. Let's take another one. We'll say f is equal to 2. Well, if f is equal to 2, I look through my rules. Well, that one's no-go because it's not greater than 2. That one's not no-go because it's not less than -1. This has the equal to, so we're going to use this rule. When you look at this rule, you might see this as weird. Like, they don't have any x's, so where do I plug the 2 into? Well, you don't. This rule essentially says that any number that I put in, I output 5. So, any number I put in, I get 5 out. So I got 5. And then let's try f is 0. Well, if f is 0, it falls into, again, this yellow category because that's between -1 and 2. And we said for this rule right here, no matter what number we input, we get 5 as our output. I think that's essentially all that I have for piecewise. Again, these piecewise functions, you're just trying to plug them in, and you're just trying to pick which is the correct rule. So we use these guidelines over to the side to say which function am I plugging it into, and then after you plug it into the function, it's essentially the same thing as yesterday. We'll try a couple of these examples today. If you have any questions, just please ask.